Life in Victorian Britain. So Britain during the reign of Queen Victoria was a lot different to how we know life now in the 21st century. How well you lived depended greatly on the amount of money that you had. If you and your family didn't have much money, you would have to get a tiring and exhausting job. School also wasn't free like it is today. Children, just like you, had to pay to go to school. So if you didn't have the money, you didn't go to school and you would have to get a job working long hours in a factory, or you might turn to crime just to make enough money to survive. As crime increased, the government became stricter, sentencing young children to harsh punishments just to set an example.
So today we're going to be looking at the lives of 4 children and the crimes that they supposedly committed. We're not going to tell you here if they were found guilty or not. That's up for you to decide when you visit the old courtrooms on your trip. Let's start by looking at the youngest person to have committed a crime in Victorian Oxford.
Her name was Julia Ann Crumpling, and this is her in the year 1870, being faced with being sent to Oxford prison for theft. She was only 7 years old. Can you work out what that writing says that she stole? It says she stole a perambulator. What do you think a perambulator is? It's the Victorian word for pram. This Oxford court book says that she was 7 years old, a labourer's daughter, and that she had stolen the pram from a Mr. Edmund Smith, who had left it outside while going into a shop. But there were other eyewitness accounts that say the pram was left unattended on the street outside Julia's home and she was just playing with it. What do you think really happened? Do you think she was trying to steal the pram or play with it? Another child, a little bit older than Julia, was Rosa Halliday. Let's take a closer look at her life and her family using the 1861 census. You might remember doing a census with your family recently. A census happens every 10 years and it's a form that you need to fill in so that the government can keep track of people's address, ages and jobs. It's quite difficult to read, but you can see Rosa's family listed next to the number 21. It looks like her dad was called Caleb and her mum was called Maria, and there's Rosa's name below her mum's name. It shows how old she was when the census was taken. 2 years old. Can you see how old her mum and dad were? Her dad was 24 and her mum was 23. In the next column, it shows what their jobs were. Can you see what they were? Her dad Caleb was a shop porter and her mum Maria was a dressmaker. During the Victorian period, it was quite unusual for both adults in the family to have a job, so this might tell us that they needed more money. However, in 1871, she was 12 years old and was accused of committing her first serious crime in Witney, in Oxfordshire. Let's take a look at the Oxford Court Book from 1871, which might tell us what Rosa was accused of. Obtaining goods by false pretences. What do you think false pretences might mean? Maybe she used somebody else's identity. But I wonder what goods she had taken. Obtaining £1, 2 ounces of cheese and 4 ounces of tea by false pretences from Florence Gay Phillips. From other records, we also know that she had obtained flannel, laces and 1 purse, also under false pretences. We also know that 2 years before this incident, Rosa's mother Maria had sadly died. Had she been trying to support her dad Caleb with money? Or had she intended for this money to be used for her to start a new life somewhere else? Another child was Robert Henry Honey. In 1872, at the age of 14, he was accused of having committed his second crime. The Oxford Court Book shows larceny after a previous conviction for felony. Felony is often a serious crime, such as burglary, kidnapping, arson, or even murder. Whatever Robert's first crime and punishment was, it clearly didn't stop him from being accused of larceny later on. We now know from Julia Ann Crumpling's case that larceny means the theft of somebody's personal property. But what was it that Robert had stolen? Stealing a knife, the property of Thomas Saunders Jr. It leaves us wondering why Robert had resorted to stealing the knife from Thomas Saunders. Was he intending to use it himself? Maybe to sell it, to make money? But what would he have used that money for? Another child who found themselves accused of committing a crime was William Merriman. In 1871, he was just 16 years old and had already been accused of committing a crime. This criminal record book from 1871 shows us that William Merriman was being accused of larceny. Can you remember what that means? He must have stolen from someone. But what exactly was it that he stole? Stealing a gold ring at Merton College, Oxford, on the 15th of February 1871, the property of Constantine Cheston. But that's not all. 2 days later, William was accused of committing larceny again, stealing a gold watch at University College, Oxford, on the 17th of February 1871, the property of Charles Edward Cree. But why do you think he needed to steal the gold ring and the gold watch?
So, did the courts decide if Rosa, Julia, William and Robert were guilty or not guilty? What did the judge think? If found guilty, they would have ended up here at Oxford Prison. Life in these prisons was often dirty, smelly and overcrowded, and criminals of all kinds would have been locked up in the same place together, from petty thieves to more serious crimes. So before you visit us, have a think about whether the children were guilty or not guilty, and whether they deserved to be locked up in a cell just like this.